Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you're any further west than California. Uh, Welcome to another ACUHO-I webinar. We're delighted that you've chosen to spend your afternoon with us, or part of your afternoon with us. My name is Alexis Foley, and I am an educational program coordinator with ACUHO-I. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are the Association of College and University Housing Officers International, dedicated to advancing campus housing and residence life around the globe. Um, so a little bit about our webinar series. The ACUHO-I standards and competencies were updated in 2025 to provide the best practices for housing departments that housing departments should strive for, and how people at all career levels can reach goals, gain professional skills and knowledge, and reach their career goals. So one of these standards is human resources, and that includes specific competencies for onboarding and training. So we invite you to review our standards and competencies. We'll provide a link for that, and to use it in your professional development plan. So today's session, presented by Dave Arnold and Dr. Kimberly Autry from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, will explore how university housing has approached culture and climate through intentional systems, relationship building, supervisor development, onboarding redesign, and staff engagement initiatives. Their work offers practical strategies for fostering a more inclusive and sustainable organizational culture, and we're excited to hear from their experiences. So as you go throughout today's session, just an accessibility note, if you would like to utilize closed captioning, you can activate the closed captioning at the bottom of your screen, at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Also, if you'd like to speak, you can utilize the raise hand feature that's going to be under your reactions, also at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you'd like to unmute and ask a question, raise that hand and we'll unmute you give you panelists access to unmute you. You're also welcome to engage in the chat. The chat is available if you have any questions or comments as we go through the session. So just as a final note, today's session will be recorded and available on the ACUHO-I YouTube channel following the webinar. We'll also conclude with a few announcements about other upcoming ACUHO-I programs and opportunities. So with that, all of that, it's my pleasure to turn things over to our colleagues from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Dave and Dr. Autry. Thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to connect with you and chat with you about creating intentional workplace culture in university housing, building systems that support belonging, engagement, and retention. I have to say that I'm really I'm on a high of presenting because Dave and I have been on our little road show for both, really for a couple of weeks now. We had our team retreat. We're, getting folks amped up, but this is housing season for training and making sure that our staff are ready to go, equipped with tools. So this morning we presented to Residential Life on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging in not only our department, but how that is shaping up around our country for higher education institutions. And we'll tap on that just a little bit in terms of how it's impacting our work here. But we're ramped up and we are ready to present to you all today. So thank you again for joining us. Dr. Kim Autry, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director for Inclusion and Talent Development here in University Housing at Illinois.
Hi, friends. My name is Dave Arnold. My pronouns are he, him, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Inclusion and Talent Development. Okay, so our learning outcomes for today, Alexis, thank you for the great intro. The overview should have good alignment with what our learning outcomes are for folks. So first, understand how intentional systems shape workplace culture and staff experience. We're going to explore some scalable strategies for onboarding, engagement, and supervision. We'll really do this through helping you understand our portfolio. We're really excited at ACUHO-I and the continued partnership, Linda and Alexis, for continual invites to be back in community and sharing some of the work that we're doing. Our hope really is, even if you don't have a unit like we do here at University of Illinois, fully dedicated to this work, if you have a committee or a workforce, or it's built into somebody's job description, or it's a passion area for staff on your team, that you can, by observing some of the things we're doing in our department, think of how you might scale that and bring a strategy or an effort to your institution, to your department. 3 is to identify some practical ways to operationalize culture work. So really tied to what I just said. So what are ways that you can start small and build a practice that is practical and a thing that might you start this semester. And so as we're going through some of the things today so that you're ready for the activity at the very end, might you be thinking about an idea that you've had on the back burner, or an idea that sparks from something we share that we're doing in our portfolio, that you can think, what's one thing that I can start this semester? One of the things that we've continually told folks in our kind of tour that we've been on and visiting with folks is sometimes folks can get stuck in dreaming and not moving it to doing. And very much our work is about action. And you'll even see that in what we call things versus strategic plans, referring to them as action plans with true steps towards moving our passions, priorities around DEIB to real work. And so I would encourage you to think about, how can I operationalize just a thing and not being stuck on all of the ideas that we sometimes have around, if we focus on this, then we're leaving out this group, or this effort is also important. We just got to pick a thing and think how we can move that forward. And number 4, what I just said, leave with one actionable step for your institution. Our hope really is that you might be able to move an idea to action this semester, even amidst all of the things that we're still trying to figure out, move-ins and enrollment cliffs and changing expectations, all of these things, that we don't have time to sit and wait for culture work. We need to do that, not as it's in addition to our work, but it's a priority of our work, regardless of what your title might be. Okay. So in the chat, if you could, I'm curious, and I see a few names, folks I know here on the webinar, so thanks for folks that are joining us live. But in the chat, what is one word or phrase that describes the current workforce climate in your department? Take a few moments, share your thoughts. Yeah, cautiously optimistic. That's real. We had that conversation this morning. There's still hope to be found. We've worked with a partner for a few years now that starts every meeting with saying, "What's giving you hope?" And I particularly think around this work of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, access, creating cultures, these type of things. That's important for us to think about. What is giving us hope? Our session this morning with residential life on our campus, we talked about we're still doing the work. That's what's giving us hope, is that in the midst of what's happened over the last year, as we've seen lots of things happen, offices be removed, language being changed, initiatives being shut down across industries, not just in ours, that we're still doing the work. What we're calling it might change, but we're still able to move forward. And so as you apply that to your own campus and thinking about, have things been removed, language has changed, where might your agency be? So I appreciate that thought of being cautiously optimistic. Somebody else said lonely. I think that's very real. Sometimes, depending on the climate in a department unit on your campus, it can feel at times lonely. Where is there safety to have conversations? Where does it feel like this is a priority for our team? Supportive. I love that. That's great. A person that shared that, I'm like, jump on that. Utilize when we feel like there's pockets of support. I think one of the things we've realized in our work is knowing it's about timing, right? Knowing are we meeting a moment, or do we understand who our pockets of support are and how to amplify and move an idea to action? So thanks for folks that shared there. Okay. So why culture work matters now? I shared this a little bit already, but I don't think that this is something that's in addition to our work, but should be woven into what we think about our work. It's not just, I think for the longest, we have continued to focus on the experience of our students. And I think if we back that up a little bit and think big picture, is how is the creation of culture and the experience that we're giving our university housing teams across all units, right? Whether in dining, facilities and maintenance, our tech services folks, contract folks, marketing teams, whatever might exist across your department. If we focus on the experience of those folks and how they interact with our place, what's the trickle down then effect for how they're bought into the idea of generating student success and student belonging and the residential experience on your campuses? For us, that's been quite important. I think the other thing that, as we see happening across our industry, is that workforce expectations are shifting. You know, for a couple years in a row, Dr. Megan Gearhart came and spoke on Gentelligence at ACUHO-I's annual conference, at Campus Home Live, rather. But we see generationally workforce expectations are shifting. New technologies like AI, changes in some of these language pieces we've talked around diversity, equity, inclusion, have all shifted some of the expectations that our staff at all levels, title levels, across the department have. Burnout and retention concerns continue. We've watched the ways in which we recruit people, institutions that existed have changed, right? OPE and some of these other experiences, how our pipelines of graduate programs and things into this work. There's been some shifts in even the recruitment aspect, and then we've seen continued burnout and retention concerns. And staff really are seeking belonging, clarity, support, and growth. We see this just like we do with students, where there's increase in numbers to certain states and programs as things have shifted across the country. But just in general, with the amount of uncertainty at moments in our world, whether it be the world with a lowercase or uppercase W, that staff really do seek these elements of belonging, clarity, support, and growth from us as employers. There's such an opportunity there. I visit with our team often and saying that we spend most of our waking hours at work. And what an opportunity to shape an environment where people feel cared for, seen, and valued in real ways, more than just us putting that in our vision and mission statements. And that really leads to this last point, that culture work is organizational sustainability work. Right? How do we keep people here, keep people happy, and also help folks see the path forward for their career and what they bring to this place? A component of our work, when I talk about our portfolio later on, is that we do staff coaching. And there's a number of folks that I've sat with in staff coaching, and Kim too, that folks will give this kind of statement that I'm just a building service worker, I'm just a dining staff member, right? And I think that to me really speaks of the opportunity to help people understand their worth. And to see their humanity. And so that's something that gets me really excited about doing this. And I think it brings me to this point, is that culture work is not a quick fix. It's strategic, it's rational, relational rather, measurable, and ongoing. It's not just a pizza party or a staff picnic. It's really built into our approach and in communication and having a true understanding of what our teams experience by working with us. Are they as proud of the brand as what you might see on social media channels that our strategic communication folks are putting out there about our departments and about our campuses? What's the messaging that they're sharing about what it is when they're at the dinner table with the people that they love? What are they saying about what it means to work for our departments?
So I'd like to share how the work has come about here at the University of Illinois in housing. We have had quite the journey. I would say that much of the work that we've been able to do, and Dave, you can roll to the next slide, the work that we've been able to do has probably been captured in these 5 buckets, if you will. In order to have this sustained and lasting impact, we have engaged in quite a bit of assessment that That assessment, I call it like lowercase a, capital A. So we've had, survey instruments and focus groups, but we've also had deep, we've had digs that we've had to do as an executive leadership team to assess and identify where are we, what is the state of our department around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, the sense of purpose that our staff have and their experiences of working here in university housing. Are those positive sentiments or not so positive sentiments? We have done quite the work to be able to assess in that way. Relationship building, if, here it says we invest in people, building trust, belonging, and strong connections across community. I will say, having a background in residential life and coming into this work for inclusion and talent development, I thought I had great relationships, but when you expand that out from our, as was asked of us, 50 or so staff over in residential life to now over 700 staff, non-student staff that are in facilities and marketing, communication, I mean, we have quite the portfolio in university housing here in Illinois, and it has been a requirement that I build relationships, that our team builds relationships so that we can best serve. And in many ways, it's not just the responsibility of our unit, but we've highly encouraged that relationship building across the entire department. Strategic planning, I will say much of that work has been identifying, as I talked about assessment, identifying what the needs are unit to unit. Again, having almost, 10 or so units, like I said, technology, dining, facilities, on and so forth. Every unit has its own unique needs. We have folks who are in and live by professional association standards like NACUFS and or ACUHO. And so they are regularly responding to and trying to meet the standards of the professional organizations to best serve our residents here on our campus. And then we have other folks that may not have a professional home or their professional home is not connected to university systems. And so it's really important that I identify what those were so that we, as we built our portfolio in university housing, we were responsive to what the needs were across the entire department. I'd also offer that in working with business services, kind of in thinking about the structure and layout of our unit, we are we are a standalone unit that has a relationship with university housing, human resources. So human resources is actually in the umbrella of business services with accounting and so forth. So I work with housing human resources to access data, access reports that are specific to our employee population. So not only the demographics, but where are we falling in terms of or where are we landing in terms of our employment numbers? What does turnover look like? And so that close relationship is really important. Again, that relationship building, that strategic planning, what are the systems we need in place to be able to design a unit? And then I'd also offer the operational systems. We are truly building this thing from scratch. So I was very glad that I came from residential life where y'all, we have the handbooks on the handbooks on the handbooks. We've designed them, we put stickers on them, and we'll keep adding to it, right? And so having those plans and putting those, not just the programs and events in place, but making sure that we have leave policies for our staff, all of the things that have to happen, developing the unit in that way, and then ongoing accountability. I have been in awe of our leadership team here. Our executive director and assistant vice chancellor for auxiliary health and well-being, Alma Salim, the amount of dedication that is necessary for this work to happen. It's not just, the amount of financial resources, human resources, but the accountability, the setting the tone that all of our executive directors, we now have an investment for all of our assistant and associate directors and next layer of leadership to be responsible and responsive to this. It helps us to not only measure the success along the way, but to ensure that the success is actually happening. And by success, I mean, are we effective in really making the mission, vision, and values of the department come alive through inclusion and talent development? Okay, Dave. So in thinking about the actual journey of our department, so those were the core elements of how to get us going. I'll share that in 20, really the end of 2019, top of 2020, we had a really unique opportunity before we knew COVID was to come to identify what are the needs what are we missing here in university housing? What are ways that we can continue to advance and build an even stronger body of work that we have? And what we saw, as I said before, with having so many units, we saw that there was a really great opportunity to bring together training and development from across the different departments. We have some units that have training and development, I mean, locked in. They have full programs, they have dedicated staff to it. And then we have units that are really quite small. And so they don't necessarily have that subject matter expertise that resides within the unit because resources, they just look different. Or we have larger units where they are completely compliance based. And so it's training, but not development. And creating a centralized unit creates an opportunity for us to have that equitable across the entire organization, but then also more specifically, make sure that our supervisors are equipped and tooled. If we're holding folks accountable, or we desire to hold folks accountable, we have to make sure that they're equipped to be able to do so. So that really was, I would say, the impetus that, like, one of the driving forces to making this this unit in the department come to be. I am a graduate of, and then my first full-time role as a hall director was at University of Michigan, and my great friends there, Go Blue, they had a very unique, one of the first that I found out about, a very unique opportunity in their housing department, which was completely focused on diversity and inclusion. And so, like any great institution, we want to model the ones that are doing really great work. And so I started to chat with Amanda and Shira, who were there, and say, how did you build this? What did it look like? And when we did the mix of what we wanted to be, both diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and also this training and development work, how are we building and supporting the entire human in the process of, being here at work? Inclusion and talent development came about. And so that assessment began to happen. So I don't know if any of you all are familiar or heard of Racism on Taught. It is a simulation of sorts. That's that dig I talked about earlier, where the entire leadership team came together and we drilled down, down, down to identify what are some of and many of us were doing this work around anti-racism. What are some of the practices that are absent that we need to adopt? What are we doing well already? And what do we need to amplify across the entire organization? And again, if you have been, what often happens is we do this assessment, we have some ideas about what we should do. It has to land somewhere. Someone has to be responsible for doing that work and holding it and making sure that it comes to fruition. And so that's what our unit became, pulling those pieces of information, that evidence that had been collected around what should be happening, and we began to build our portfolio of work. And so when we were created in 2020, just me, we thought we would have more staff, but then the pandemic occurred, and for a few years, it was just me. So building those operations, developing events and initiatives, and working on some of that strategic work, pulling together some elements and pieces. We had opportunities. It says centering equity, diversity, and inclusion and belonging, developing job description prompts. Our university housing committee helped to develop these prompts in our job descriptions to say everyone is responsible for either leading, if you're a supervisor, or engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion as a university housing employee. That led into, as I said, identifying some of the needs that our department has communicated. Great conversation with my colleague, Matt Brown, who leads facilities here. He said, Kim, I feel like there are so many individuals who work for our unit in facilities who have so much potential, but maybe they haven't heard that potential is there. And they see, as Dave said, they see themselves as just a worker, or this is just a job. But because there are conversations that haven't taken place, maybe they need to hear that this could be a career. You might be ready for leadership. There are characteristics you've got the goods. Somebody just needs to speak life into those things. And so he said, would you mind chatting with a colleague, and talking to them? I said, absolutely. He said, something like coaching. I said, that's exactly what we should be doing is inclusion and talent development. We should be doing some coaching. And so that's where the coaching work occurred. And so we started coaching supervisors on ways that they can help to develop their teams and be thought partners with them as they develop their leadership capacities in their units. But also, there are folks who are working here who had ideas about what they might want to do next and needed help developing a resume or getting ready for an interview. We did that, coaching folks up to think about what could my career look like, some of that career planning. And I would say that in addition to training development, that those two have really been the bedrock of our talent development pieces. The Housing Inclusion Committee, as I mentioned, I would say because I was a team of one, that was the team by which we were able to, and they became a working body. We're really familiar, y'all, on the different kind of committees. We've got recommending committees, we've got steering committees. I say, hey, y'all, if y'all going to be on the inclusion committee, we're working over here. And so we've had to, and over time, kind of shifted what the work looks like. But we became the assessment body for diversity, equity, inclusion more specifically. We did best practices review. What are folks doing in each unit? What kind of training programs and diversity initiatives do they have? What are the gaps and how can we as a department in a more centralized way fill in some of those gaps? That moved us to identifying a culture and climate survey that needed to be done. And it was the first that we'd ever done. I have to tell you, I got that idea from Maryland. Had an incredible program that they'd done just in residential life, actually. So, and phenomenal work. And so we built our plan based on their plan. We worked with Illinois Human Resources here to administer the survey. We wanted to make sure that there was the utmost integrity and the anonymity of the survey and the focus groups that were done. And that then turned into the development of a culture and climate action plan, and we'll talk a bit in a moment about that, but it reviewed several different areas. But across that, the body of work began to build, and it made a stronger case to say, we have a lot we need to do to create a healthy organization for 700 plus non-student staff, another 1,500 student staff. We're thinking about the amount of turnover many of us were experiencing, with the great resignation that was upon us at that time. We're going to retain good talent. We have to actually put resources behind that. And so we now have a team of 5. We began hiring staff. No longer was it just me and an intern and an admin. Have been able to build a team of experts who are really making this work. We're tapping in at the next level, and I'm really, really proud of that. I'll talk about the 3-year assessment plan or strategic action plan that has been created. But really, I would say that when we think about, the foundation, the listening, the growth over time, developing a strategy, not just for the growth, but for the sustainability of the work, it requires action. And so Dave will tell you this about me. I'm like, we're launching at 70%, sometimes at 60%, because when you're a new unit, we don't necessarily have the privilege of waiting until everything is perfect, because in the past it was just me. So we're just gonna figure it out as we go, and then identify how we need to rework a thing to make it work for our department. So I've been really proud of the team that we've been able to build. You can go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about the culture and climate action plan. So in 2021, you can go next. We had a survey, as I said, of which we are developing. It was just on our inclusion committee call before this, where we were discussing the culture and climate action plan for 2027. That will give us that full view of what has hopefully helped to shift the culture in our department. And I can tell you, both with the pulse surveys that we've done over time, but also just anecdotally what I've heard, what we've seen, the individuals who've been here 20 years who say, this looks like a place that I used to work in a good way. I'm so glad I'm still here, who are engaging in our organization in ways that they haven't in a very long time or ever at all. the increase that we've seen in Black women in leadership in facilities. I mean, we are seeing the culture shift in numbers and in the qualitative ways that quality ways that we would hope. The first commitment around inclusive and transparent communication really came about because our survey said, we want to see you walk the talk. You say that you do these things. What does that look like? Leadership in housing, how can we get more access to the information of decisions that are being made? And so we have shifted that. We host a meeting once a quarter for our staff, and in that time, we ensure that we are giving them the high level view of all the most significant decisions that are being made in those senior leadership team meetings. We're communicating more frequently with our assistant and associate directors about decisions that are underway. So we even have made it a point to not come to a final decision without communicating with the rest of the leadership team, thinking about all of the leadership in the respective units to get that buy-in. Because how we're making decisions for folks, across my colleagues here in housing, sometimes we've seen departments make decisions without chatting with the folks who are actually implementing those changes or are going to be on the other end of that decision. And so that's really important. And so I've been proud to see that shift. We've come up with an internal communication plan, one that we had not had before. Training and development for supervisors. Many of the folks that were in that survey, both as supervisors and folks who are being supervised, said, I need a stronger supervisor because it is the data, the research tells us that folks leave jobs. Why? Sometimes, most times, because they did not have a great supervisor. That's why they leave. And so if we can make sure that we have built training and development experiences that tool them up, that's what we're going to do, because then they'll serve as better supervisors. But what we also heard from supervisors is that they don't feel confident. Sometimes they have the information, but they don't feel comfortable and confident to intervene, maybe around incidents of bias and intolerance or managing conflict. So we're like, well, what are we doing? Let's make sure that we give them opportunities to practice those skills, not just sit in a session, a training and information dump, but how can we help to cultivate those skills? Make sure that we're, nurturing the skill set that you need so that you can serve as a leader in the organization. Equitable compensation, all the research points to any survey, employee engagement survey, any retention survey you take, equitable compensation is always going to be at the top of the list. It doesn't matter what industry we're talking about. I will say, being at a state institution that is managed by a system that is beyond our control, it was very difficult to win over my peers and our colleagues in the department around equitable compensation, because in many ways we do not have control over any of the aspects of compensation. But I said we would do ourselves a disservice to not identify priorities that allow us to at least respond to what is a very present need and concern of our staff. So to say, hey, yeah, it's at the top of the list, but we can't do anything about it, so we're not going to talk about it, that doesn't necessarily speak to the responsiveness we owe our staff. But then also, might we identify ways that we can have impact in this area? And so I was really proud to see that we said that this would be an area of research. But we also found that as we did that, we found out there's some of the rules that were there were not actually rules. And there are opportunities that we did have to create some impact around equitable compensation and what our best practices would be around advocacy at the institutional level to make sure that we could best serve our staff in that way. And then lastly, recruitment, retention, and advancement. These were opportunities for us that we need to see a more diverse population. We need everybody to see themselves from different socioeconomic backgrounds, gender, race, everything. How can we make sure that we have an even more diverse workforce, both in recruiting them in, but also retaining folks and advancing them? And so again, we know that we don't necessarily always have the power to promote from within or promote in general. So how are we creating opportunities for folks to be able to access that experience. The QR code in the top corner there will take you to the full plan. If you would like to see that, highly encourage you all, check that out. I would love to chat more for those of you all who are interested in building out a plan for yourselves. It really creates an accountability for the work that we say we want to do and making sure that it actually happens.
Yeah, I was just going to offer too, and I think that this is shown when folks go to that QR code and see the actual book. Kim, your peer group, the team of directors, were also champions of different efforts related to culture and climate. So while our unit has grown, we're still a small unit of five staff that are servicing, our over 700 non-student staff, and then as Kim said, over 1,500 student staff on any given year. So as a part of these larger, projects on the action plan, they're at the executive level of our university housing team. There's buy-in and accountability that executive team members are helping move ideas to action in these four kind of categories of the culture and climate action plan.
Right. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
So quick poll. Let's get back to the chat. Which area is your department currently focusing on the most? A, recruitment and retention. B, supervisor development. C, communication and transparency. D, onboarding. E, employee engagement. And or F, assessment, climate work. Where are y'all at? Drop it in the chat. What are we doing? Okay, I see communication and transparency. And in many ways, I think the communication and transparency is one of the most important pieces that we can focus on. Recruitment and retention, you can see the numbers. If you're doing it well or not, right? By your turnover numbers, you have some data to back that up. But when it comes to communication and transparency, in many ways, that contributes to the climate. Do folks feel psychologically safe enough to communicate feedback in the organization? Do we create spaces for two-way open communication to happen? Do we even have a system? We noticed that when we did our assessment plan, we're like, we don't even have a way of talking to them. We have built our entire portfolio of communication around communicating with future residents, current residents, and their families, but not necessarily the folks who work with us. And what I had to learn when I came into this role from residential life, everybody's not sitting by their computer. We have probably 2/3 of our staff who are never touching computers, probably don't even know their email address to campus because they are in our dining centers preparing meals and cleaning. We have facilities folks and carpenters who are out in the field doing the work and do not have time to touch, their phone or a computer. And so it's really important that we think about what are our efforts to make sure that we're communicating regularly, consistently, and transparently the information that we know they need to know, but also what they believe they need to know. Vic also commented employee engagement. Absolutely. One of the pieces, Dave and I submitted a proposal that didn't get accepted. I forget the conference. Probably was the HR conference. We said, bring back the barbecue, bring back the company barbecue. So many people said in the assessment, what are some of the reasons, you feel the way you do about working for university housing? They're like, we used to have a barbecue and they took it away. Oh, we used to have the pizza parties and they took them away. Over time, different financial strains, different leadership come into play. We know this happens in any department. Things just change over time, but we cannot let that change over time take us away from engaging and creating spaces for folks to engage, particularly in, I would say, smaller units and departments and larger ones. When you have a large department, I mean, we have experienced this, and Dave will talk about, some of the events and experiences we've helped to create. It is such a beautiful thing when you come to work and we have some of these engagement experiences. And I've got folks from facilities and marketing connecting, folks from, dining and our information office connecting in ways that they normally would not have because their paths just don't cross naturally on a day-to-day basis. But if I know you, I know who I work with, I build relationship and I trust who I'm working with, I might want to work there longer. I might want to engage and show up in a different way. I might actually give you the best that I've got instead of just the best that I have that day, right? And so employee engagement is incredibly important. And Becca says building community through shared food experiences. Absolutely. This summer, our dining team, they have these taste tests that they've been doing all summer. So they're testing their menus. So a few years ago, and probably longer than that, instead of just doing their taste tests internal to dining, they've opened it up to the entire department. So they're like, hey, y'all, come taste the new menu items that we're thinking about for the fall. And you better believe everybody from across the department is making their way to get some of that tasting happening. But absolutely, shared food experiences. I'll let you take it, Dave.
All right. Okay, so let's move then from talking about some of the strategy to then talking about some of our actual staff experiences that we do. So I feel like Kim did a great job teeing it up and helping you understand inclusion and talent development is a unit in university housing at the University of Illinois. So I just want to make that abundantly clear, just like residential life and facilities and dining, inclusion and talent development, though a small team, is a unit, a standalone unit with strong connectedness to housing human resources, but honestly in strong partnership with all units across university housing at Illinois. This QR code actually takes you to our microsite for housing staff. So our website, the primary audience for our housing website is still our prospective students and families or residents and families. But within our website, it takes you to a microsite where there's all the employment opportunities across our department for student staff and non-student staff. And then there's also this information. This, I think, takes you directly to talking about some of the things that we do in inclusion and talent development. It's similar language to what is on our brochure. So we have kind of a half sheet brochure that talks about the different things that we offer as far as experiences and development for our staff, along with our contact information. What I would offer to you, though, is that all but one of our efforts is opt-in. So strong partnership across all of our units, as Kim kind of shared, and talking about the birth of our unit and this type of culture work is really thinking about how do all folks feel invested in this, right? So, thinking about this language of like, well, the department, blah, 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 right? The department doesn't care, the department this, right? And our folks on our teams can do that. We have to make sure that everybody feels like they are the department, right? And have buy-in from the various levels of leadership across our units to want to engage and see the value in the efforts that we're putting on. So the goal is not simply to create programs. It's really to create intentional systems that shape employee experience consistently, right? So from supervisor to supervisor or from facilities to dining, we want folks to have shared language and shared experience and feel bought in the way that we see, in units like here, Res Life really bought in, really excited, right? And a lot of our campuses, Res Life staff can be really excited, a lot of rah-rah, but is that same energy and excitement about being a part of this thing and really what it means to work in university housing and the impact that folks feel directly connected to our student and resident experience. Do folks see that, right? And see themselves in that? That's been really important. So while our focus has been on the folks working with our students, it's really understanding the connectedness and the direct impact that by caring about and creating systems, structures, events for our staff, that hopefully that creates then a positive experience for our students and our residents. So I think that that's really important for us. Okay, so first I want to talk a little bit, Kim had referenced this, so communication and departmental committee. So reference to our marketing and internal communications plan, Kim made kind of early on, but within that, some very specific initiatives. And again, as I go through our portfolio of what we do, I'm really hoping that there might be something that either sparks an idea for you or an idea that you might want to extract and adapt for your institution and your department. And so as we get into the end of this, when you think about an action item for you, We'll also make sure that that Alexis and Linda have our contact information. Obviously, you can find this easy on the U of I website as well. Happy to help you move ideas to action. But with our internal communications plan, we now have a biweekly newsletter that goes out to all employees called In the Loop. This has really become a highlight reel of all the different activities and initiatives that we're doing, training opportunities that we have for staff, job openings that we have. This is a place where we celebrate staff accomplishment and the length of service of staff members, and making sure that folks are aware what's the pulse, what's happening, so that folks feel in the loop, if you will. We also started a LinkedIn page, rather, where initiatives are put out to the team there, and engagement has bumped a lot. If you were to check out our LinkedIn page, you'll see that the audience there, it's the University Housing LinkedIn page for U of I. It's very much the target audience are our current or potentially future employees, different from what you might see on some of our other social channels. And you'll see increased engagement, especially as we highlight staff. So there's been spotlighting of different employees across the department. We also have a blog that comes out with different stories that help people feel the deeper connection to what the work is and the impact it's having on our students. There's a story that we're working on right now to share about the impact that the coaching experience, employee coaching experience that we do, has directly on our students and student workers in university housing. We also have a housing microsite, an intranet, if you will, that shares all of the different efforts across all units, resources, documents, et cetera. For inclusion and talent development, it's really kind of become an internal website about all the things that you can do, the ways that you can request services for us, so on and so forth. So, and then the Housing Inclusion Committee, Kim already kind of visited about, but these are folks across title levels and identities and across units within university housing that are very much helping do the work of bringing ideas to action from our Culture and Climate Action Plan. All right, organizational development. So here, the Culture and Climate Action Plan, Kim talked quite a bit about the work that's occurring there and how we're bringing those things to real initiatives and real change of experience of our employees. The other thing connected to the Culture and Climate Action Plan, she talked about the initial assessment survey, but there's been pulse surveying that's been occurring that are like quick check-ins with folks. How are we doing, right? To measure against, are we meeting some of these markers that we had hoped for? Are we feeling it more than some of the anecdotal? We get a lot of anecdotal feedback about the positive experience folks are having from our efforts and events, but are we seeing it then in our data? So a few of other things that we do around organizational development. So this is what I'm going to do here is kind of cover our portfolio and talk about these different components. So org development, organizational development, the Culture and Climate Action Plan anchors so much of our work, thinking large scale organization development. ITD requests for services, much like any other ticketing system that you might have on your campus. If people need to put in a technology ticket or a work order, so on and so forth, for our unit, this is a way that folks can signal to us that they need help building a training or a team builder for their team on a variety of topics. It could be for supervisor development or leadership development. It could be something that's DEIB connected, but a way that they can signal to us that they either want us to develop and deliver, for us to help them to like co-deliver a thing, or if they want help in the development stage so that they could build their confidence in the curriculum to go and deliver this thing for their unit. So that's the type of things folks can request from us. ITD consults are these strategic level projects that are more like higher level or multi-pronged. So an example of this, there's a unit that we've been working with that is desiring to kind of increase agency of their mid-level managers, right? So how are their mid-level managers creating an experience for employees where folks do feel seen, cared for, valued, where mid-level managers are owning their agency and the leadership that they do have. So that's a little bit more of a strategic level and lots of prongs and how we do that. And then our university housing orientation, one of the things specifically that we were asked to comment on for this session, we have brought back a university housing employee orientation experience that's held once a month. It's a cross-unit collaboration between inclusion and talent development and housing human resources, where we deliver a 90-minute session to all new employees that have been hired within the past month, where they can come. They have some giveaways and materials that they're given, so that we can, in a one band, one sound way, kind of start to set the stage for what employees should know about us and what we hope they experience from us, so that we don't rely on inconsistencies by unit or supervisor, but we have one moment as folks start their onboarding with us where we can communicate who they are, what they get as a member of our team, and what we hope they experience. They can begin to learn about all the different opportunities ahead of them. A simple idea, but oh so important, as so many things have adjusted and we've adapted through the years how we onboard employees. We've seen this to be a really impactful way, that there's just lots of employees that just don't know all that it means to work for not just the housing department, but for a university, and all the things that that gives them access to, from faculty, staff assistants to access to different events and things that happen on our campuses. So this has just been a really impactful way to reach people and for them to feel like they know somebody, especially for us in a big department of over 700 non-student staff, for them to feel like, oh, I remember that person that led my orientation, right? So they have like a person that they can continue to connect with. All right. Some of our career development opportunities. So one, Kim talked about our professional coaching. This has been wildly popular with and has not required much more than word of mouth. We had talked about, oh, we need to do like a relaunching and advertising of the coaching program. And we have not done that strategically because we have lots of folks that come to us for coaching, and it can be on a variety of things. Our coaching, we have been able to find a path forward for there to be confidential coaching outside of things that are expected reporters. So we're still responsible employees that are mandated reporters for the things on your campus that you know what that means. But beyond that, right, whether I'm talking about a situation, a frustration with a supervisor or a colleague or a situation at work, and we're helping people through that, or we're helping them prep a resume and cover letter. Those conversations are allowed to happen on the clock and with supervisor approval across all units, across all titles. Folks can come and seek coaching with us. That's another really important note that I would make about all of our efforts, is that these things happen outside of a couple of efforts that we do that are off-campus activities for staff, are all approved work events. Supervisor approval is needed. We don't want, a dining worker just walking off their job site or a BSW leaving their run without having visited with a supervisor. But all of these things are approved work experiences. The Next Step program is a program that's designed for people that are in upgrade eligible roles. So, a building service worker or a dining worker, where if their supervisor is out for a period of time, they can be upgraded to be that person. So this program, really, supervisor training education program, is what STEP stands for. But it's an opportunity for folks to learn what it means to make that next step. And also they leave after 2 sessions and a coaching session, go back and visit with their supervisor, asking to be considered for opportunities for upgrading. This has been a great way for us to consider people not seeing themselves in dead end, I'm in this dead end job, or I'm just but really to see a future that they can have in university housing. So trainings and workshops. So some of the trainings and workshops we do listed here. Annual equity inclusion training is the only required training that our department does. It happens at the top of January before students return. And over the last 6 years, we've picked a different topic. I think that that's a really important piece for you as you're thinking about ideas now. I feel like in a lot of committees or work groups I've been on, specifically DEIB related, folks can get stuck in thinking like, well, if we focus on this population or this idea, then we're neglecting all of these other things. And what's been really important about this work is that we pick a thing for the year and we move forward on that. And then over the course of 6 years, we've covered a wide array of topics under the DEIB umbrella that now we've created shared language and a foundation for understanding across all of our employees in university housing. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things we've given to folks is don't stay stuck in all the, well, then we leave out this group, or then we're not prioritizing this. You will over time amass that you've covered lots of different topics. Take Two is a two-part series that we do. That's a certificate program. I think certificate with a lowercase c, because we said it is a certificate program where folks engage on a DEIB topic, 2 2-hour sessions. At the end of it, they get a certificate. That's been a great way to give professional development to staff all across university housing, and a great way for folks to engage across different units. So, like Kim had said, to be in these spaces where you can have a facilities worker having a conversation with the Res Life staff member, and they're working through a tabletop activity together. It's taken some finesse for us to find out where is the meeting people at a variety of different levels as they come into these conversations, but how can we also curate an environment where that actually can occur? And there's sometimes I think we can think we're so different. Our work is so different. Facilities is so different from dining. It's so different from res life that we can't engage in a meaningful way and all be on a similar page. And we have found through Take Two that that's not the case, that we're able to curate environments where folks can be in community and advancing commitment and language and awareness around DEIB topics. Manager series for us happens in October. We do 4 to 5 sessions specifically geared for those who supervise other people. Wellness Week is a week in April that we do. We know that April is a good time to visit with folks as we're kind of ready for the end of the academic year. And that week is just focused on you as a human, not you, your title. So we do lots of activities that are truly just focused on employee well-being. Dig Deep is an effort that is a 2-day now experience for folks that might be familiar with SJTI experience, kind of rooted in those types of things as 2 all-day immersive experience where folks can really engage deeper around DEIB topics. Crucial Conversations, if you're familiar with Crucial Learning as a company, they have lots of materials out there, learning and development type materials, but we have brought that here and started from the top down, training people on Crucial Conversations. So first cohort of folks we took through is our executive team, and then we've continued to work through all levels of management across university housing. This is really helping people, as Kim talked about earlier, understand how to have tough conversations and address conflict and accountability in meaningful ways. And then we have supported ACUHO-I 1 institute and 1 symposium with the team pass. So if you think about as professional development budgets on some campuses have been cut or reduced, it's been a great investment for us to buy a team pass and gives access to all of our employees that they can engage in ACUHO-I's once a semester learning opportunities. So some of our appreciation, engagement, and recognition activities here. Looking at time, I'll be cognizant of the depth I go through these, but we do 2 events that are engagement focused, one in the fall at an orchard here in town, and then one in the spring at a trampoline park, where we say, come bring your family, all expenses paid, give an opportunity for folks to connect. Those have been very rewarding and have had big numbers for us, over 300 folks at each event respectively. Housing happy hour, so non-alcoholic happy hour that we do at the end of every month. The first one we'll do will actually be the Friday before homecoming. We'll do a tailgate prior to the parade that happens on campus, but very similar. Want to create a space at the end of a work day on the last Friday of every month for folks to come, enjoy some food, hang out, play games. We've done bingo and trivia and all kinds of things there. Our summer annual staff appreciation event happens in the summer. We do a big like carnival, if you will, food trucks, bounce houses, DJ, character artists, so on and so forth. This event 4 years ago started out with just over 150 people. The second year we did it, we had over 500. The third year we did it, we had over 700. And then this last year, we had over 1,000 people attend our summer appreciation event. I think it really shows that when you take a deliberate approach, that these type of things matter, and it's worth our time, even if you don't have big budgets for those types of large scale events, that you can bring meaningful engagement and recognition to your teams. Make a Difference Award is a way for us to have certificates and awards that are available for folks all the way up to the assistant director level. So assistant directors and up are not eligible for, but a way to acknowledge the good work that's happening across the department. That's a low budget way that, create a certificate, maybe a nice little or meal opportunity where you can recognize the folks across your department that are making a difference. And then our affinity group. So we have 4: neurodiverse in housing, spectrum in housing for our LGBTQIA staff, women of color, and young pros in housing. These happen when folks come to us and say, we would like a space. And we then put money behind it, support behind it, and development for leaders to curate a space for populations to come together. This is really about capacity and community. It's not about serving the department. So we're not looking to these groups to deliver anything necessarily to university housing, but really to curate space for folks to be in community with one another. And really, the piece that I put here at the bottom, these things really, for me, tie back to making sure that folks know that they belong. This coming year, we're going to do some increased opportunities around student staff. So all those activities I've talked about to this point have been focused on non-student staff. Moving forward, we're going to get all student staff across the department, dining student workers, front desk workers, RAs, et cetera, having opportunities for engagement, for coaching, for free headshots, for, get them ready for internships and careers. And then some training and development type workshops. So that's now what we're branching into this year. The thing we asked you to consider then is, from this list, what ideas are coming up for you? What's one thing that you could start this semester? So we just encourage you to think that you can start small. So could you do a pulse survey, a quick way that you could gather some timely feedback? What's check-ins with supervisors look like? So if you're a director of a department or you hold a leadership role, when's the last time that you checked in, not just with your direct reports, but even another level, maybe beneath your supervisor level, to have kind of an understanding of what's going on? How can you make sure that folks don't feel just supervised, but coached? And bought into some of these mission and vision statements, the things that we say we're about. How are folks really holding that to action? Pulling back evaluations that maybe occurred in May or June to make sure that people have action plan to deliver on those in the new academic year. Really thinking about what's one strategy that you can do. Recognition. I think there's so many easy ways. I budget 30 minutes on my calendar every week to send a few Teams messages for folks that I've interacted with in the last week that had kind of meaningful impact on me. That doesn't cost a lot of money. It costs 30 minutes of my time. But what are ways that you can build a strategy and action that allow for more recognition to live in your departments? Structured onboarding and community building opportunities. We gave lots of examples of the things we're doing, from university housing orientation to some of these engagement events. So we just ask you to think about what are some of the things that you could be doing, even if it was just one thing across some of these ideas. And again, start small. So our key takeaways, Kim, take us home.
No, the things that we talked about over the course of our time. Culture work is ongoing organizational work. It's everybody's work, and it's work that helps to shift and move the needle for the entire organization. Onboarding and supervision shape belonging. They just talked about that. How can we ensure that everyone feels like they have a place in our organization, that they truly belong with us? You can create that opportunity, that experience with, once they come to you, once they come to us, how are we onboarding? How are we setting the groundwork for them? But then also, how are we supporting them along the way? And often that touch point is through supervision. Small intentional shifts to create impact. Doesn't take much around recognition and some of these other engagement opportunities. They're likely already happening, but how do we tap into them and have a strategy around it? Systems and relationships both matter. The system helps to build the relationship, and the relationship helps to sustain the system, the organization. And finally, accountability and assessment sustain progress. We need metrics. We need to be able to identify how we've been effective, and it helps to drive and tell our story even better to the folks who are internal to our department, but then those who are external to the department. So as we close, thank you all for hanging on with us for 5 additional minutes. We'd ask you to think about, in these key takeaways and the things that you've learned, what is something that you can do realistically as you move forward? Do you have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Dave and I appreciate your time. And if you all have any questions, please look us up on LinkedIn. We would love to stay connected.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave and Dr. Autry, for sharing about the great work that you're doing at the University of Illinois. And thank you for your continued partnership and incorporating ACUHO-I, the ACUHO-I One events into your training and development. We do appreciate that. Also, just want to thank you for giving us all of this information to reflect on as we all try to intentionally create sustainable and inclusive departmental cultures. We also want to thank all of our attendees today. Thank you for joining us. As a reminder, today's presentation was recorded and will be uploaded to our Cool YouTube channel. The link to our YouTube channel and our upcoming event, both of those links are in the chat. So thank you again, Dave and Dr. Atri. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to seeing y'all at upcoming ACUHO-I events. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.